are going to have to be comfortable with stuttering, in order for all of these things to be effective.
Welcome back to Speaking of Success, the podcast where we uncover the transformative power of communication. Today, I'm honoured to welcome Sharon Steed. Sharon is an empathy expert, dynamic keynote speaker, and founder of Communilogue, a consultancy dedicated to building empathetic and collaborative teams. Sharon's journey is truly inspiring. She overcame the challenge of having a stutter to become a renowned speaker, sharing her story on big stages all around the world, including a powerful TEDx talk that continues to inspire audiences today. So grab a coffee and enjoy this amazing conversation with me and Sharon. Sharon, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you here.
Hi, yeah, it is amazing to be here and talk to you today, Spencer.
Fantastic. So on these podcast interviews, I normally start things off with taking you back in time and just to understand a bit about what was the early days like for you when you first decided to do public speaking or you first had that opportunity. What was that like? Where were you and when was it?
So I kind of came into this from a place of scarcity and a place of fear. So I'm a person who stutters, and I was at a time in my life when I had just become so terrified of just talking to people, and so I was seeing this speech. The therapist at the time who said, "Hey, I'm going to teach you a lot of tools and techniques like that are going to help you to make stuttering easier." And I said, amazing. I can't wait to learn how to, just easily get through all of the words. And then she said, but, you are going to have to be comfortable with stuttering, in order for all of these things to be effective. And it was just such a foreign concept of like, how am I supposed to be comfortable with this, thing like that has been my biggest insecurity and vulnerability for as long as I can remember. And so, obviously, like I said, well, how am I supposed to get comfortable with this? And her idea was to attempt public speaking. And so after I told her that she was absolutely bananas and that there's no way in hell that I was doing that, and how dare she even bring that up because I've been avoiding this my whole life, I took a couple days, I thought about it, and I said, hey, like, I need to get comfortable, and if it's, going to be speaking, then I guess the only way that I'm going to be comfortable talking is if I actually like go out there and I begin talking. And so, like the first talk I gave, it was actually to a graduate fluency seminar at Northwestern University in Chicago. And so it was the first time like that I had like given a talk and like prepared a speech and like did question and answer. And it was also like the first time like that I was introduced to this concept of I can be articulate even though I am a stutterer. And so, as a result of that, I decided to continue to just pursue it as a way to just like prove to myself like that, I can do this, and like I can just get more confidence. And so, the next talk I gave was something called an Ignite talk. And so, like those talks are 5 minutes, and then I believe you get like uh 30 slides, and they change automatically like every 20 seconds or something along like those lines. And so I gave that talk, and there was a conference organizer there who invited me to come and speak at his, conference. And so I did. And then from there is when everything began to really kick off, and I, began to pursue this as a career in earnest. And so all of that was in 2014. So yeah, that was 10 years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah. And 10 years, I mean, as anybody who is courageous and climbs up on a stage knows that it's a marathon, not a sprint. You don't do one talk and
Absolutely.
the next day you're like, oh, I can do this now. So what were some of the, like, obviously we can't go through the whole 10 years, but what were some of the big milestones for you or moments that you remember along that journey of going from those early moments to gradually building your confidence?
So a thing like that was most surprising like was um you know how I had to do a lot of things off stage in order to get invited to be on a stage. And so a lot of the confidence like that I built was because I had to hop on calls, and like I had to essentially sell myself and my services, and convince people like that I am worth the investment. And I come from a writing um background, and I think that we as content creators, like we're not people who are like accustomed to like having to be salespeople. And so a lot of the confidence I got like was because I really had to identify my value proposition, and how I could really impact and improve like people's audiences and their experiences. And so in the process of just uh going on calls and like talking to people, I was able to do things like be invited to give a TEDx talk. And I did that back in 2016. And then I also recorded my first LinkedIn course like back in 2017. And like those things like did come about because of speaking, like, but um they were possible because I continue to pursue all of the sort of behind the scenes conversations that like a lot of speakers like just don't talk about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think because obviously I saw your TEDx talk, and the fact that you did that only 2 or 3 years after you started the journey of becoming a speaker is a huge thing anyway, because that's probably one of those opportunities or environments that's kind of got that high pressure feel to it. So like maybe talk a bit about like what was the lead up to that like? What kind of process did you go through? Was there any mentors or people that you worked with? What was that like when you suddenly got this amazing opportunity to do a TEDx talk?
Okay, so I had spoken at a ton of conferences before. Like at that point, I had been doing it for about 2 years then, and so a lot of the times, like people turn you in, okay, have like a couple of conversations, they approve your slides, and then you come in and you give your talk, and then you go home. Everything that you do, like that involves TED is incredibly high touch. So we had to go through a series of approvals. I think I did like 4 or 5 drafts of the talk like that I ultimately gave. I mean, like I think the process was probably like 6 months or so, and I talked to them, I would say a couple of times a month. I had to give the talk like over the phone a couple of times so they could give feedback and approvals. And so they are incredibly supportive in that there is like constant communication, and they are very, empowering and encouraging. However, like they also take, their craft and their content and their like brand incredibly seriously. And so, you as a speaker, like they really are, trying to push you to be as succinct and as articulate and as thoughtful and as thorough as you can in like 18 minutes, and that is an incredibly challenging thing. However, like there is a lot of support in this long, sometimes tedious process. I think we also like had to do a dress rehearsal like the day before. Like it is a whole like if you are going to do a TEDx talk, then be prepared to commit about 6 months of just you know improving your craft, like as both a creator, as well as an orator.
Yeah.
It is a very intense process.
Yeah. It's like a double-edged sword, because I always say that practice makes permanent. The more you practice the talk, the more it's in you, the better you feel, the more, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. But yeah, when you have to do it to the extreme, you must have been almost like just, oh, can we just get on with the talk already? I've said it
Yeah.
so many times.
Well, yeah. And then, I mean, I was like, okay, like I am so comfortable with this content. But then it's like, well, is it okay? Like, am I too comfortable with it? Am I going to get on stage and just be like, oh my God, this is boring. I've heard this 80 times already. Like, I don't know if the audience is going to like it. And then, like that's the other thing is that, on this stage, it is completely black. And so like I can't see the audience. And so I can't tell if they are um, into it or if they find me to be incredibly boring. And so just the entire process itself is just a lot. I mean, gosh, like I have anxiety even currently from thinking about this, and it happened, like 8 years ago. But overall, incredible experience and an incredible group of people for
Yeah.
sure.
What changed after the talk? So, did that open up more opportunities? Did it change you as a person? Like, what was life like after the talk?
So, um, in terms of opportunities, it actually it gave me a couple of things, right? It gave me some legitimacy. At the time, it was an incredibly big deal to, give a TEDx talk, right? And so, those are the talks like that get, uh, you know, tens of thousands of views, um, hundreds of thousands of views. And so, like having your name attached to, that brand is powerful, and that a lot more people are going to take you more seriously. And then the other thing that it gave me was just recognition. I was pretty unknown before I gave that talk. And so after that talk, I think that Google began to sort of put together, oh, this is Sharon Steed. She talks about vulnerability. She talks about empathy, and she stutters. And so when, companies or clients or conferences like would look into me, I was much easier to sort of identify, in search.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The TED website was doing its thing for sure, I guess, with
Yeah.
so you do the TED talk, you've done a lot of conference talks, you've done the LinkedIn Learning course. So when you look back from now over the last 10 years, what kind of benefits or, what has public speaking given to you? Because it's one of the things I'm exploring a lot at the moment is this idea of public speaking is a skill that if you can get over that initial obstacle of like, it's scary, I've got to put myself out there, I've got imposter syndrome and a million other things, that if you can get past that, it actually gives you many great things in your life. So what has that been for you? What kind of benefits have you seen from persevering through that marathon to learn how to do public speaking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a ton of things. So again, I come from a writing background, and so, I've always been very good at just putting words together and, you know, telling stories and sharing information in a very compelling way. However, doing that on paper and doing that in person are two entirely different skills. And so, as a result of speaking, I feel that it has helped me be a lot more quick on my feet. Um, I am a lot more comfortable and confident in just conversations, right? How I speak to people. I feel that, I can articulate just my thoughts and ideas a lot more effectively. And then another thing that's also just been very surprising is that I've become a better listener. As a speaker, after your talk is done, you spend a good amount of time, having conversations with, your audience, right? Like people will want to come up to you and tell you, all of the things, like that they cut out of your talk. And I think that, a big thing that I sort of took away is that, before I became a speaker, I would approach conversations as, okay, I am talking. Now I am waiting for my turn to talk again, and then I'm going to talk again. I wasn't really like paying attention to people. But like being a speaker, like you have to really like hear people out. And then you like also have to process a lot of that information incredibly quickly, and then have a very thoughtful response in a moment, right? And so yeah, I mean, like just being a good conversationalist. Another way that I think that it is really improved just me as a person is that, I am a lot better at taking compliments now. I think for, a lot of women, like we sort of are like, oh, don't say that. I'm not that great. Like, no, like that comes off as very, insincere or just dismissive. And so like now, I'm able to sort of, like take those things in stride. It isn't as uncomfortable anymore. And the more that you are around other speakers and, like you give talks and you speak, you know, you have just a heightened awareness of, how your body language and, how your words are coming off to other people. And so, yeah, like public speaking just has a ton of benefits, like both personally as well as, of course, professionally, like that go beyond just being able to get up on a stage and talk.
Yeah. Wow. There's so many good points there. I think like, let's talk about the taking compliments, because I think this for me, and it was a learning process for me as well, because it's all tied up in imposter syndrome. Like I wouldn't believe compliments because of what's going on in here. And
Yeah.
it was another speaker that said to me that, yeah, but Spencer, this is how you build confidence. Like, take the
Mm.
compliment. You did the work. Yeah, maybe it wasn't for everybody in the audience, but some people came up to you and said, that was amazing. It helped change how I think about something. So I am 100% with you. I think like take the compliments and believe them, because that really, really helps with confidence. And I love what you said about improving how you can do things like active listening. I think that's one of the superpowers that I felt straight away was when I first started to go to speak at conferences. And like you say, you either have people come and talk to you afterwards, or I would like leave the room where I did the talk and I would go buy a cup of coffee and sit down. But then suddenly there's somebody there. Hey, I just saw your talk. Can I ask you a question? And it was almost like this. You have this like ability to go talk to anybody. Whereas before I might be a bit shy going to talk to people at a conference. Now suddenly people are coming to me because they recognize you as the speaker. And yeah, and you're right. You suddenly have to develop this way of like, okay, this is not going to be just a backwards and forwards conversation. Is they're going to want to ask something about that talk. How can I think about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to structure it and things like that. So yeah, it's really really powerful things that it can give you once you've done it a few times, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I am a person who sort of identifies as being, a little bit shy and, also an introvert. And so, going to these conferences, I sort of just thought like, okay, like I'm going to get on stage, I'm going to talk, and then I'm going to run and hide. But a thing that I learned very, very quickly was that, when you get on stage as a speaker, like that is just the beginning of the conversation, right? Well, and it's also an actual conversation. You are just the only one doing the talking, right? I'm sure that you have, sat through a ton of horrible talks where it feels very like disconnected, and it feels like this person is just there uh delivering very like boring information in a way that isn't compelling. And so, a thing that like I had to take to heart very quickly was that, I have to make this talk a conversation. Yes, it's only me talking. However, it's a conversation between like us as a speaker and then our audiences. And so then when you do, get off stage, like that conversation is going to continue. And like that's because that's how, your audience feels. And so yeah, like I had to learn quickly, um, like that sort of conversational technique, and to always give people like the space that they need to continue that conversation in a very easygoing way. So I'm sure that you have experienced that same thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's, this is, I've heard it when I've been looking at your speeches, you talk about this a lot, this idea of empathy and communication. And I think it's really important. It's pretty hard to figure out, how do I start? Like, would you, if I imagine somebody listening that would be like, oh, yes, this is what I need to do. What would be a starting point, or what are some of the things that people could do?
To be like a better speaker, or to be like a better empathetic communicator, or
Exactly.
both?
To have more empathy when they're doing a talk. That could be they're talking to their to
Yeah.
their colleagues, or it could be if they're on a stage. But yeah, when somebody's standing up and doing a talk or a presentation, how can they practice more empathy?
You know what? I think the biggest takeaway here is that, okay, so this isn't going to sound like, me being empathetic, but you have to bring the kind of energy that you want people to feel, right? So I have gone into some like incredibly tech conferences where like all of these people are like software developers, and like they, aren't there to talk about engaging empathy. Like they are there to learn about, like different code languages and all of that stuff, right? Like I have been like the only quote unquote soft skills talk in a lot of conferences. And in the beginning, I felt I would have to go into these situations and be as sort of tactical as possible and say, okay, here's how you do empathy. Here's step one. Here's step two. Here's step three. But over time, I began to see this pattern of if I bring in just, who I am and the, kind of energy and the kind of experience that I want, all of my audiences to really engage in, it is really going to put, them into a place to feel a lot more comfortable and confident, sort of engaging with a different part of themselves and their brains. And, like that's what empathy is. It's allowing people to, be a part of themselves like that and are not always comfortable being. And so, you as this speaker or, as a part of this conversation, like you have a lot of control here in that, if you sort of create a space where it is safe, and comfortable for, other people to really show these more vulnerable parts of themselves, then, you are going to change people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of, yeah, you have to show empathy to get empathy in a way. So it's,
For
yeah,
sure.
because especially in situations like at a conference, it's almost like we've conditioned people in the last 40, 50 years to be passive. I sit, you talk, I listen. And I always think that, like, yeah, if you suddenly open up on a stage and be vulnerable and almost have that feeling of it, yeah, you can't have a two-way conversation with 150, 200 people, but you can have a feeling of this is a conversation more than I'm just going to be the teacher on the stage and I'm going to teach you how to do things. So I think
Yeah.
it's great advice to, yeah, have that feeling of this is who I am, this is the energy I have, this is what I want to talk about. And that's what you need to do first if you want to get that back. It's really nice.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to hear how you approach that. Because for me, like that whole conversation piece is a thing that like, like just I do as a way to, like have my talks be just like a little bit more engaging, like, but like, what do you do? Like, how do you, like approach that?
Yeah, it's been a complete journey, and it's still a
Yeah.
journey. So, because again, I'm like any other speaker, I'm filled with anxiety and what if it goes wrong and all that kind of
Mhm.
good stuff. But yeah, so in the beginning, I was very much like, okay, I go, I talk, I take a couple of questions, and I'm gone. And that's how I kind of built my confidence in the beginning. And then I was like, I began to understand that the Q&A bit, it was actually where a lot of value was happening because that's when people could ask me those
Mm.
specific questions. So I started like dedicating more time to Q&A and less time to me talking. And then I experimented, which was one of the most scariest things I've ever done the first time. But I decided I'm going to start with Q&A. So I was at a conference.
What?
Yeah, yeah. So I was at a conference in here in the Netherlands, and it was like a communication conference, and I was talking about storytelling, and I had a presentation, and I kind of started, and I said, "Look, I'm here to talk about storytelling, and I want to make sure that you get the most value out of this session. But I don't know what value is unless you tell me. So you just start shouting out, like, what's on your mind when you think of storytelling? And I had like a flip chart on the stage, and I just started writing down what people were shouting out. And I knew that some of those things were like way too specific that I couldn't deal with on the stage, but I could say to people, hey,
Hmm.
if you want to, let's talk afterwards. I'm happy to get into it. And what I suddenly realized is, okay, I knew enough about this topic that I could handle most of those either in the presentation or I could weave them into the talk. So that was kind of like the next stage, but that was a pretty scary way to go. But it was really good. Then I started playing around with, okay, I want to start asking more questions to the audience. So, and I started with sometimes just rhetorical questions where I didn't necessarily want them to reply back to me, but it was more just because they would still have that thinking in their head and it felt like we're having a conversation. And then I would start to get people to shout out things more. So, like raise of hands, who thinks this and who thinks that. So, to build up that kind of interactivity. So, and I think that goes in parallel with this idea of conversational presenting that I've done more and more, which is in a small room, it's a lot easier to do when there's 4 people or 5 people. But yeah, if you're in front
Yeah.
of an audience with 100, 200 people, then you have to do that in slightly different ways. Um,
Hmm.
I've also done where I have up on the screen 5 or 6 things, and I say, okay, so I'm here to talk about rhetoric or whatever it is. And there's 5 things that I can talk about, but we've only got time for 4. What do you want? And then I'll get people to start shouting out things and like, so I'll play on those kind of things. And yeah, maybe I've got enough time to do all 5 anyway, but it's more just to like signal to people that like this is going to go a little bit differently and how can we
Yeah.
talk more. um I've also done, I did a few weeks ago, this was not a conference, it was an internal company event, so it was 50 people, and I was talking about conversational presenting. So I have to do the
Hmm.
conversational presenting. So what I would do is, as much as I would have questions throughout the talk where I'm getting into a conversation, 50 people was a bit hard, but I could still get away with it. But then I would also stop at the end of each section and do Q&A, because one of the other things you realize is somebody might have a question when you first start talking, but it may be 20 minutes to the end of that talk, and maybe they forget the question. So what I do is I say, okay, there's 5 things I'm going to talk about. And at the end of each one, okay, let's get into a conversation. What questions have you got? How did that make you feel? Like, and start to get that conversation going a little bit between the audience. And that's a really nice way of doing it. So instead of having just the Q&A at the end or just the beginning, is just break it throughout the talk and just do different Q&As as you go through it. So I think that's the best way that I found for being more conversational when it's a big room of people,
Yeah.
as opposed to when it's just a few people. But yeah, but it's scary too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as a speaker, the first time I had to do the question and answer, I was terrified. Like I was like, there's no way. How am I supposed to answer something really quickly? I'm going to say the wrong thing. Oh my God, they're going to be so disappointed. They're all going to know that I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
Like that's how I felt. And it's funny because like at this point now, I love the Q&A, right? I mean, it's a time like where I feel like my personality comes out and and a lot of the times again like even if you can't answer the question specifically, um people they just want just anything that they can get from you, and so it feels like a conversation, and it feels like an opportunity to just like further connect. And
Yeah.
as a speaker, connection is just, like the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also you relax more when once you got used to
Mhm.
doing Q&A. It's like you haven't got that pressure of like, I'm doing a presentation, what am I saying next, do I need to
Yeah,
click the slide? Like there's a lot of things happening in your head, whereas when you get to the Q&A, it's like, yeah, it's me and one other person right now having a small conversation, and then I'm going to open the conversation to the rest of the room. It's like I find definitely that, yeah, I relax more, I become myself more, like, because you move from I'm doing something that's more of an experience to now it's much more a conversation. So it's yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So I'm imagining somebody listening to this conversation who's like, okay, I want to do public speaking, I want to give it a go. So if you imagine somebody who's a beginner, who's like all of us, a bit scared, imposter syndrome, what do you
Mhm.
think is a good first step for somebody wanting to start to build the skill of public speaking?
So because I come from a background of like empathy and writing and just using my own personal story as a stutterer to sort of connect, I always tell people to um, connect your sort of, core uh, content to something personal that you can tell a story around. Right? So, I talk about communicating with empathy and I'm able to deliver content around that like with the sort of backdrop of just like my own experiences of having a difficult time communicating like just in my own personal life, right? So I always think it's good to begin with a very compelling story connected to your core content.
I love that. And store if it's your story, it's easy to remember. You know how to tell it.
Very much so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such great advice. It takes a lot of pressure off you as for
Hmm.
those first times. So I want to give you some time in a moment to talk about where people can connect with you and where they can find out more about you. But before that, is there any final advice or any message you want people to walk away with?
Yeah, you know what? Speaking is kind of a terrifying thing, and I also think that it is quite unnatural in that it feels like we are going up on stage, and it is like us against all of these other people, right? And so they're, all there to judge us, and they're, like all going to just like pick us apart and say like, oh, this wasn't, a like good investment of time, or, like all of these, um, um, like horrible things that we, uh, like tell ourselves. And you should know like those things, just aren't true. Like people are so invested in hearing what you have to say, and overwhelmingly people are just rooting for you to succeed and to be like this compelling force that they are going to be able to take away something from. And so, I mean, I mean, like I've been doing this now for 10 years and I still, like have to tell myself, like that everybody in this room is on my team and all of us are, here together and we are all experiencing this, together. And so, yeah, just, I know that it's scary, but people, just want to, feel connected to another person, especially that person who is on that stage. And I promise you have a story to tell and you can add a ton of value to a lot of people.
Fantastic. I love it. So to close us off, where can people find out more about you? Where can they see your videos, LinkedIn learning course, whatever it is? Where should people go?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's communilogue.co. That has all the information about the consulting arm of my business. And then I have a bunch of courses over on LinkedIn Learning. One is called Communicating with Empathy. Another is Driving Inclusion with Empathy. And then I also do some online trainings with O'Reilly Media. I think those are going to be coming back Q2 in 2025. So yeah, reach out and say hi. I would love to connect with you.
Fantastic. And I'll make sure that I put all of the links and stuff below when it goes live. So all that remains is to say a big thank you for sharing some of your journey with public speaking. There is a lot of gems in there for people to be inspired by and to start their journey. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Spencer.